Good afternoon, everybody. Well, I'm happy to be here. I work in the IBM Analytics division of IBM. That's where we have assembled all the software, hardware, services expertise to bring to bear on how we can use data and analytics in organizations. And I know that we have a diverse group of people here today, so whether you're responsible for delivering sales operations, you're responsible for manufacturing, you're responsible for the IT systems that can deliver data and empower your business users with analytics, we all share something in common, and that is that we know that there's value in data, that analytics can help us get that value, and that we can put it to good use on our journey for our organizations and for our departments and for our own profession. Now, we know that every day we walk past solvable problems, we walk past opportunities every day. And I remember my first use of analytics was actually in high school. I realized, as all overachievers, that I wanted to do well in exams. I also recognized that there was a standard curriculum at schools. I was educated in England. And that if I could analyze the last 5 years of history of exam questions, I could potentially predict the questions that would come up my year in my exams. So I used analytics to look for the patterns of those questions. The first test was in physics. I guessed all 4 questions correctly. I found out that not only would that help me with the rest of the exams, but I could have a very lucrative outcome by selling my predictions to my fellow schoolmates. And that was my first entry into finding a solvable problem that everybody else walks past. So what we find is in analytics is that it's the curiosity. The data is available to everyone. Every organization has access to data. Analytics is available to everyone. We have compute power now. So it's really what are we going to do to actually change outcomes by putting that to advantage. So we have companies all around the world that are using analytics to create outcomes for their organization. And let me share a couple of them with you. We work with 2 Swiss insurance providers. They're looking at how they can process their claims quicker to meet regulatory compliance, but also to better serve their customers, that when an insurance claim comes in on a car accident or something, they can turn around that claim very quickly, by law 30 days, but they want to make it even faster than that. They've used analytics to see and get visibility into that claims process across many departments, across many data sources, and use that to meet the regulatory compliance so they don't get penalties, but also to provide better customer service. We also work for a company that's looking to help people find their partners in life in order to create relationships between people. They analyze all the data in the intent that they can better serve and build subscribers to their matching service. And they've seen a tremendous increase in subscribers by understanding people's interactions and what's needed in order to find those people. There was another company in trucking. So this company was looking at the risk assessment of trucking companies and accidents. And they realized, out of curiosity, not only could we use that data to help understand the risk and the accident occurrences, but by providing that data to the trucking companies, there can actually be prediction of the behaviors that happens to prevent those accidents from happening in the first place. So by using that data, can tell truck drivers when to take a rest, when they need to stop, and how they can prevent fatigue in order to prevent those accidents. And there's hundreds and hundreds of these different examples of how people are putting data to advantage. We know from the facts of analysis that when people do analytics, they actually can drive business results. And there's 3 habits that we see very commonly in the leaders. First off, they look at applying analytics to all data. The most relevant data is often not the easiest data to get hold of. So look at all the data inside and outside the company. Secondly, they look at the time value of data. There's no good me knowing the results of the questions of the exam after the exam. I needed the analytics in time for me to take an action to revise the right subjects before the exam happened. So the time value of data is very important. The analytics has to be at the speed of the business before the outcome happens in order to change the outcome. And then the third is the sophistication of analytics. We're all very familiar with managed reporting. These leaders are taking the step from managed reporting to predictive, to machine learning, to cognitive, to all to try and find more interesting patterns in a very diverse set of data. So I want to share with you 5 key success factors that we've seen organizations take on their analytics journey. The very first is a cultural shift in companies. We must have a culture that has curiosity and asks questions. Now, I've been quoted as saying there should be more 6-year-olds in companies. And that's not because I believe in child labor. It's because I believe that the children at that age constantly question the status quo and the world around them. Why? Why do I have to do this? Why did this happen? Why is this happen? Why? We need to create a culture of curiosity. And I've seen organizations put chief data officers in place in order to have a strategic intent around the use of analytics. I've seen organizations look at applying analytics in more hands of people and employees. Putting interesting statistics by the coffee machine gets people interested in data. Asking someone in a meeting to be responsible for asking for what's the data behind that decision. Just creating that curiosity around data. And then also knowing that there's a new emerging set of people, the data professionals, the data scientists, the data engineers, that can create wonderful insights and be able to deploy those into applications. So it starts with the first step, which is with people and with culture. The second step is to understand where an organization is on your journey. And everybody's at a different phase, and everybody has different models. Here at IBM, we put it into 4 main phases. First off, that when you have data, it's all about storaging, managing it, ensuring that the data's there to run your operations. The second step is to start making that available for analytics in data warehousing. We see advances in the data warehousing space to move to incorporate Hadoop or open source technology as a way to expand a data warehouse for all the different types of data that's needed. The third step is about empowering lines of business in order to be able to find analytics, find insight, find ways to drive their business based on data. And that's where we see organizations moving from small sample sets, what you may be able to look at in a desktop tool, to looking at all available data. Data that's sitting in structured databases, content data, unstructured data, data coming off sensors. That's all about looking at empowering lines of business people with a greater breadth of or corpus of data and the advanced analytics moving from discovery to predictive. The fourth step, and this is really where I say that there's a paradigm shift, is where we move from thinking that people are going to look at data and make a decision to the fact that we need insight driving applications, driving processes, and actually producing new business models. Now, I'm based in San Francisco, and I've seen a few new business models come from Silicon Valley, 2 of which are painful to me. We have a lot of traffic in Silicon Valley, and there's 2 areas where analytics has changed my life. First off, in traffic jams, you can actually pay to go into the carpool lane, a lane that's usually privileged for many people in a car. There's now variable pricing. If there's not much traffic on the road, I could pay 30 cents to get into that lane. The more the traffic backs up, it can rise to $6. So variable pricing based on analytics of the traffic. Another variable pricing is parking your car. So you've now got through the traffic, but now you want to park your car. There's now variable pricing from the parking meters based on the amount of available parking spaces there are in a particular neighborhood. Now, before you would never have imagined that that was possible, right? You get on the road and you just get on the road, you sit in traffic, you find a parking space, you expect to pay a standard price for parking. So there's these new business models emerging as people find opportunity to basically monetize what was not monetizable before. And I would say that your biggest step in analytics is to actually look for the opportunity in stage 4, even if you're in a prior stage in other parts of your business. We see most people are stepping from data warehousing into more predictive analytics, different data sets of analytics. So the second step is really plot your journey. The third area, and where I find I'm in lots of conversations, particularly with IT, which is, we've just got our Hadoop cluster up, now we're looking for a project. No, I mean, it's great you have a Hadoop cluster up, but really we need to look and start with the business problem. We need to find the problem in the business that analytics would help and start there and let that drive all of the technology. And when we look across the different areas of a business that somebody can start, we see a couple of patterns. First off, the most common place to start is with customer relationships. So how can I use analytics to better understand my customers, the processes that I use by which I interact with my customer, and understand how to retain them and attract more profitable customers? So that's the first area. The second area we see is in fraud and risk. So how can I use analytics to better manage the risk in my company and make sure that I'm not exposed as an organization, either regulatory or socially or for my own personal organization brand? So those are two main areas that we see. The other area that we see is the expansion from analytics being to make a decision to analytics informing and driving interactions with employees, with customers, with partners, to the next step of analytics actually being in the business process in real time. So the third step, after you've thought about your culture, you secondly have decided about where you are in your journey. The third is to pick the business problem that you want to address. Now, a couple of examples of companies that have chosen their first area to start. So the Carphone Warehouse, they provide millions of devices. They chose to look at analytics in order to understand their marketing effectiveness. So that's where they started with customer. They then looked at analytics in order to improve their operations and what they could serve their customer. So now they use the data to be able to insure devices on behalf of a bank. So they're looking at that linkage in order to provide more value to the customer. The second example is Dublin City in Ireland. So what they wanted to look at is how to improve the efficiency of their transportation system. So they have about 1,000 buses going around the city. They used analytics to understand congestion areas, where those buses were. They can drill right in their operations room to look at the cameras on the road where the buses are maybe backed up. And they can look at how to even out the bus routes and the system to create efficiency and therefore serve the citizens better. So a great use of the combination of video analytics as well as location analytics to be able to understand what's happening in that system. The third area, which I love because I'm a tennis fan as well as a tennis player, is the analytics that the Wimbledon team do. They want to attract fans during a 2-week period at Wimbledon, but also keep them fans throughout the year. So here there was a focus on the fan experience of understanding what was happening with matches, what the players were saying. In fact, there's now the keys to win the match, where predictive analytics determines if only player A hit more backhands successfully, they would win the match. And fans just love getting involved in that. Indeed, at the end of a game on a show court, each player gets a USB stick with their data, their statistics, and the keys to success. I wonder how many times they use it, but let's hope that they're learning from those analytics as well. So a great example of fan engagement. 3 very different areas, and for your business, there will be a particular area where you really want to make a difference with analytics. And so I encourage you to pick your own core competent area you want to do. The fourth area is to build against a master plan. Quite often, we rush into a project, we build for that one, and then it becomes very hard to change or very hard to expand, and there's always the next demand, the next demand. So we say, start with the end in mind and have a master plan. That master plan includes looking at the type of analytics that you have or you want to employ. It's maybe that you do reporting today. Maybe you have some predictive in some part of your business. Maybe you're experimenting with machine learning so that the program can automatically understand and adapt as it goes. You need to look at the type of analytics and make sure you have the right analytics for the data set that you want. Quite often we see the barrier to this is that there's pockets. Some people can do predictive, but over here there's another department that only has managed reporting. Over here there's someone who's doing real-time text analytics, but another department cannot do that. So you really need to look at what analytics you need to be successful. The second area is relevant data. So we have an example of a shipping company who brought us in and said, we're trying to look for where we lose shipments. Somewhere between loading and unloading, we're losing shipments. And so the IBMer asked, well, what data do you look at for that? Oh, we look at the shipping orders and the bill of lading. Okay, well, that may be the readily available data, but no one's going to write on that shipping order, we're going to take 6 boxes off between here and there. So you're actually looking at available data, not the most relevant data. So always think about, is the data going to give you the answer that you need versus it's the easiest to get hold of? And make sure that that data is trustworthy so that people actually use it and they go, oh no, don't believe that data's wrong. You need to make sure that it's trustworthy. The third area is, how do you build an IT architecture that you know will be able to deal with the complexity? So we know that it's never going to be one single database, one single tool, one single infrastructure that's going to serve our needs today. We need to be able to architect so that we can use different data containers, relational, non-relational, NoSQL, Hadoop, whatever the data container is for the data. And we know that we need to blend them together on-premise, on an appliance, on cloud in a way that makes sense for the cost and the complexity. And we constantly need to look at new technologies available to us. The open source community has narrowed in on data and analytics, and there's a tremendous amount of innovation happening in open source, and it's a matter of how can we adopt it in our organizations. So at IBM, we have a very broad portfolio. We have, as some people say, we have so many products, we cover it all, but you're not quite sure what we do. So I just want to share a little bit about what we have in our portfolio. And we can mix and match what we have with what's already in organizations to really fill in the gaps in your master plan as you build it. First off, we have expertise in analytics. So whether it's spatial analytics, location analytics, temporal, time-based analytics, predictive, all the way to machine learning, cognitive analytics, we have a set of analytics to really find the patterns in the data and fill out the area that you may be just starting or just looking at. Secondly, we look at data integration and governance as a layer in a company. So that governance needs to go across all the data. We need to make sure that it's private and secure. The third area is we know that it's a hybrid world. So we want to make sure that data can flow to an analytic regardless of where it is stored, and it shouldn't be too hard for you to do that. So we look at how we can do fluid queries across data sets and how we can do that across wherever the data is. With big data, as we all know, you cannot move the data to the analytics. You have to have a world where you can move the analytics to the data because the data is just too big to move. And then third, we look at how we can incorporate open source into the architecture. Open source is great for innovation, but it's also time intensive for development. So how do we wrap that with a platform so that you can get the benefit of open source without the downside of open source? So in terms of the capabilities that we have in our portfolio, it starts at the bottom with the integration and governance layer. We have a set of data management capabilities, relational as you would expect, as well as Hadoop systems and NoSQL systems. We have business intelligence and predictive in order to provide the basics of analytics. And then we have a set of tools that range all the way from individual discovery tools like Watson Analytics to very rich tools for data scientists to write their own algorithms and deploy algorithms that are very specific to your business. In terms of architecture, we've architected our platform centered around 2 core technologies. We're built on Spark, and we're built for cloud. So we worry about being able to put the DNA of Spark into our technology and how to deploy it in a way that makes sense wherever your location of deployment is. So how many people have heard of Spark, looked at Spark? Just a few people. So we announced back in June a big commitment to Spark. You can think of Spark as a unifying platform that brings together the tools for a data engineer, a data scientist, and application developer to work together to access the data, write their algorithms, and then deploy that insight into applications. It's an analytics operating system to make applications smarter. It's the fastest growing project, Apache project out there, and we've committed our machine learning engine to Spark in order to really help the machine learning aspects of that technology. Actually, I encourage you, if you're around in Amsterdam at the end of the month, to go to Spark Summit and learn more about that, or send your data practitioners to that summit to really learn about Spark. It is the most exciting part of open source that has happened recently. So the fifth one, so we talked about the culture, we talked about measuring where we are on our journey, we talked about picking the right business initiative, building an architecture against a master plan. The fifth and final one is really to decide what IT initiative to start with. Are you going to look at creating a data foundation? Are you going to look at bringing together your customer data into a single view? You're going to look to modernize your data warehouse to include unstructured data. You're going to look at where you can get data from content. You need to match the IT initiative that you're thinking about to that business project so that you can get a quick win. When we look at how organizations start their projects, we know patience waits for no one. We need a very quick turnaround on our first analytics project so that we can learn and we can get to the next project fast. So we really say identify the business need, prove it out. If you don't have a chief data officer or someone in charge of analytics, I suggest you self-appoint yourself as the analytics leader and get going on your particular project and then scale from there. The biggest fault is to try and solve everything from the very beginning, not go one project at a time. Of course, here at IBM, we have a lot of expertise. We have deployed thousands of projects, and we have a lot of resources that are available to you, whether you're an IBM customer or you're not. We have Big Data University, where we contribute courses on how to deal with big data. You can learn Spark and other fundamentals of big data technologies out on Big Data University. And we have a lot of meetups and places where you can engage. We also recently announced a data science studio in Amsterdam, where we will have specialists in data science that can help with particular client projects and really get you going on your first project. I mentioned one upcoming conference where we will be talking about what we're doing with open source and Spark, which is Spark Summit in Amsterdam. Also, if you're willing to get on a plane and go to Las Vegas, we have our largest analytics conference. I'm telling you, the 10-hour journey is well worth it because you will hear the strategy of where IBM is going with our cognitive capabilities. You'll hear about and speak with product experts, and you can join your peers in understanding how your project is doing compared to others. So I want to finish where I started, which is we have a choice every day to walk past a solvable problem. We have the opportunity to walk past and not do anything that changes our business for the better. I would say it's time for us all now to look at analytics, look at data, and decide that we're going to make a change. We're going to make a change for what we can do for our organization. We're going to make a change to our business and make ourselves more competitive. This is a race. It's a race to insight, and I encourage you all to join the race, and thank you so much for your time today. Thanks.